I don't want no oil a-spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
And together we are creating an hour of radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a program where we talk about ecology and the environment, and we talk about it in terms of how it affects you, your family, your wealth, your health, your happiness. And try to do it with a little bit of humor, and we try to do it, I know we have fun doing it. We hope you have fun listening. And we are, again, doing it from our homes. And, every week it strikes me anew, when you come into the studio normally, and you've got that 15-minute walk from that grand entrance down all those marbled hallways to the actual studio, on that walk you get that growing sense that you're going to do something great. And that's hard to maintain when you're sitting in your living room in a nice, easy chair.
I think it's the harp music.
The harp music also, yeah, that definitely.
And the string quartet, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and, good friends with the harpist there. It's nice lady. So to try to capture that, I like to dress up every Sunday morning for the show. And this week I'm I was feeling kind of professorial, so I'm in a nice tweed jacket with leather patches on the elbow, and I'd kind of hoped we'd be done with COVID before I ran all the way through my wardrobe of nice clothes, but it doesn't look like it. Looks like I'm gonna have to start recycling. But I am all dressed up and ready to go, and happy that you are with us. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We have a special guest. She'll be joining us at about 8:15. Her name is Cathy Cowan Becker, and she is a volunteer with the Sierra Club, and she's working out of Columbus on something called the Ready for 100 campaign, and we'll be talking to her a little bit about that. I don't think it has anything to do with that movie, The 100, but we'll see. We'll find out. So speaking of walks, one nice thing I wanted to report to get going. My wife and I took a walk along the Maumee this past week, and remember last week we mentioned that bald eagle populations have just about doubled in the last 4 years. We're up to more than 700 working bald eagle nests in the state of Ohio now. Well, my wife and I saw a couple of them. We saw two really nice bald eagles on the Maumee River at a little park near Grand Rapids, in between, with Lucas County on the one side and Wood County on the other, and it was just amazing. It was awe-inspiring, and
wow.
We also saw a lot of other critters too. We saw some great blue herons. In fact, we turned a corner on the trail and we startled this poor great blue heron. It was almost as tall as we are. It was a huge bird, and it was in the process of eating a carp that it had pulled up on shore and had kind of like opened up with its beak and it was eating the liver and stuff like that, which is kind of gross, but it's nature, that's nature, and we were thrilled to see it because it means that, the great blue herons are thriving, and at least some fish species are thriving, and just like we could all thrive if we all committed ourselves to a green future, to trying to give nature what it needs as we get what we need out of it. So that was really nice. Unfortunately, one thing on that trip that wasn't so nice is that Carol and I were almost the only ones wearing masks. People think that just because they're outside, they're sort of immune, that the disease doesn't spread while you're outside. Well, that's not true. If you come close enough to somebody who's got COVID, they can transmit the disease to you even when you're outside with them. And so, when you go out, even if you're going to the park, bring your mask. And we don't wear it most of the time, but when we're passing somebody on the trail, 20 feet out, we put the masks on and we go past them. And if the trail's too narrow, we'll actually step off the trail to maintain that social distancing of 6 feet or so. And people are getting this idea that just because somebody in authority has said things are opening again, that now the whole problem is over and we can go back to exactly the way it was before. But unfortunately, that's not true. I mean, one of the lessons of ecology, one of the things you learn when you study environmental science, is that all the rules that apply to, let's say, populations of animals in the wild, when a disease gets into a new population, those rules apply to us too. We're also biological critters, we're also animals, and a new disease has entered our population. And the ironic thing is that we were demonstrating sort of our uniqueness, our separateness from the natural world, because we were displaying enough intelligence and we had all our great communication and all this knowledge that we have at our disposal to do things like isolating and preventing the spread of the disease. And what in a natural population, this disease might have already peaked, but a good percentage of us would now be dead. We managed to stop that. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Just agreeing with you.
Oh, okay. Don't apologize for agreeing with me, Rebecca. Never apologize.
Yeah.
For agreeing with me.
Yeah. So that's always the right thing to do, right?
I like to think so.
Yeah.
So, so we have people that are wanting to ignore the social distancing. They're like 6 weeks is enough. The problem is you can't make that kind of bargain with a virus. You can't say to the virus, look, virus, I gave you 6 weeks of my life by staying home and watching Netflix till I was sick of it. Now go away. I'm afraid viruses don't work that way. And if we just try to go, and if we just try to go back to the way things were, the exponential growth will begin again. The hospitals will get overwhelmed again. We'll probably have to go back into lockdown again. So, make your mask. Take your mask with you. When you're out on those trails, maintain your distance. Do all the things that will continue to block the spread of the disease. And we might be able to get through this. So how have you been coping, Rebecca, with the continuing of COVID here?
Not too bad. It's very disheartening to me. I mean, of course, I'm appalled about the loss of life that's going to occur because we're opening back up prematurely, but also it just, I'd rather do one long walk down myself. Because it's going to come back, because we're opening up too soon, so it's going to come back. And then it's just going to feel like some weird cat and mouse thing where, you think you're free and then it pulls you back in over and over again, and that's going to be very hard on me. I would just rather quarantine and get it done with.
Yeah, I agree. And, people are talking about how the economy is the reason we're opening back up again. Well, the Ohio is kind of the perfect example of what's going on with this, because we had this really steep rise in cases. If you look at there's a graph. The New York Times has a graph of how the disease has progressed in terms of deaths and number of reported cases. And in that graph, you could see Ohio went up really steep, really fast. Then we all did the lockdown, and it dropped down almost as steep and almost as fast to the point where it was pretty low. But then you can see on the graph where they started opening things up again a week, or this is about 10 days ago now, and the graph has started going back up again. and the back up line is just about parallel with the initial going up line. So it was like, yeah, we sort of proved we can do it. We proved we're smart enough and we have the tools to stop the spread of this disease. But now we're also proving that we're dumb enough to put those tools aside as they were. It's like, hey, it's working. Let's stop.
Yeah. There's a friend of mine who put it kind of nicely. It was only a matter of time before Ohio began to Ohio.
For a while there, it really was kind of interesting. Ohio was kind of this beacon of rationality and reason, in an otherwise dark country where a lot of states were actually just denying the seriousness of the whole thing. Got to give Ohio credit. For a while there, we were literally a world leader in the fight against COVID, but as soon as the economic pressure started, we caved.
So basically, we can do something right. We just don't want to.
Yeah. Now it's very clear we're choosing not to. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that we can basically, there's a bill before Congress that would give all Americans $2,000 a month for the next 3 months, and then with possibly authorizing another $2,000 for 3 months after that. I think if we were doing things like that, the economic crisis could be gotten over. We could get through the economic crisis with government help. I mean, that's why we have a government, to help us through crises like this one. But there's some people that, and I came across this on Facebook. I just had this realization. There's some people that think government should not help. They think that it's wrong for government to actually do things and help people, and it's wrong for governments to succeed, because when governments do succeed, that shakes their whole philosophical foundation that government is in fact evil. And so there's people who would rather see the economy collapse and millions of people die rather than see the government actually help us get through this crisis and solve the problem. And
there's a guy who's on Facebook who's trying to tell me that the government should not tell him to close down his business because it's his private property. I don't think I'd have to check, but I don't think there's actually anything in the Constitution saying that you can do anything that you want with your private property. I don't even think there's anything in there saying you have a right to operate a small business.
Yeah, well, and we do have a right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, and in a case like this, our lives are threatened, and I would rather have our government protecting our lives than protecting. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not, than protecting business. I would rather have our lives protected than our businesses protected. And there's a lot of people that argue, but they're one and the same. You can't have life without business. Well, yeah, you can. I mean, maybe not long term. Maybe you need to keep things going in terms of an economy and trade and so forth long term. But in a short term crisis like this one, the government can just cut us checks, and we can ride out this pandemic, and then we can talk about reopening businesses and getting back to normal. That's my perspective go ahead.
To some degree, there's kind of been business as long as there's been humans in the terms of trading stuff for other stuff that you want or need.
Yeah, that's something humans do. That's part of our skill set. But the main point I want to make is that we are critters, and if someone pointed out on Facebook again, if the biology crashes, if we all start dying literally by the millions, which is what will happen if we allow the unchecked spread of the disease, the economy will collapse anyway.
Yepers.
So it's not like you have to choose between life and the economy. You can have both if you approach it rationally, the way countries like New Zealand have. Okay, so Rebecca, you were looking up something about a lake in Tennessee.
Right, yeah. Some people may have known, I probably mentioned, I grew up in 4 different states, so the downside is that we moved every time I made any friends, and the upside is I saw a lot of interesting stuff. Among those was Reelfoot Lake in Tennessee. It's a natural lake in northwest Tennessee, and it was created by a series of earthquakes in the winter of 1811 through 1812, which actually were felt as far away as Quebec. And they made the Mississippi River run backwards. What actually happened, I guess, is that the park it caused the land to subside on the east side of the Mississippi, and the water just flowed right into it. So it's a really cool little place. I remember going there. It was like a boardwalk around this big central basin, the Blue Basin. I guess that the deal is that it's technically speaking a swamp, and it has a lot of like ditches that connect the basins. And I did not know this, but okay, that got me into the definition of what's a swamp versus a bayou. A swamp is technically speaking it's a wetland with trees. It's a wetland. It's a forested wetland. That's what a swamp is. And a bayou is defined as the marshy outlet of a lake or river, or a slow-moving stream or river, or marshy lake or wetland. So mostly, a bayou is kind of a river within a swamp, basically. I had no idea. All right.
Well, that's an interesting story. Just one of millions of interesting stories you get when you start looking at ecology and the environment. That's one thing that I love about being an environmentalist, being an ecologist, is that there's no end of these fascinating little side trips you can make and little things you can learn.
Nature is really weird.
It is.
Yeah.
But one thing we have learned pretty well is that we've got to switch our energy source. And our guest who has now joined us, Cathy Cowan Becker, is working to make that happen. Hello, Cathy. Are you on the line?
I sure am. Hello.
Hello. Welcome to For a Green Future.
Thanks for having me.
Cathy, Rebecca, and I are eager to talk to you. You're out of Columbus. Well, could you just tell us a little bit about your organization and what you're working on and what Ready for 100 actually means?
Sure. So I am the chair of the Ready for 100 Columbus campaign, and also support similar campaigns in other cities around Ohio. And Ready for 100 is a campaign of the Sierra Club. It's to get cities to commit to transitioning to 100% renewable energy and to help them make the plans to actually make that transition. And so nationwide, this campaign has really taken off in the last few years. So I believe it's now 162 cities have formally passed a resolution making this commitment. I think it's 8 states now have plans for transitions to 100% renewable energy, DC and Puerto Rico, and I think it's up to 13 counties now as well. 1 in 4 people in this country now live in a community committed to transitioning to 100% renewable energy. And in Ohio, the cities that have actually made this commitment are Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Lakewood, which is a small suburb outside of Cleveland. So we've been working to also make this happen in Columbus for the last few years. Many people don't know that Columbus is actually the 14th largest city in the country. We're basically the same size as San Francisco. And we're growing. Central Ohio is expected to have 1 million more people by 2050. So it's really important to start this energy transition now, so that we grow in, we're probably going to have people moving here regardless, so we want to grow in the right way. What we're doing.
Yeah, and that's great. That's obviously something which needs to happen. So what kind of support are you getting there in Columbus?
So we've actually made quite a bit of progress in Columbus. They're doing a lot of things right, and a lot of it is, so it's not just renewable energy. We kind of developed, for lack of a better term, like a 5-step program. So the foundation is energy efficiency. So cities are responsible for 70% of carbon emissions globally, which is why this campaign focuses on cities. And within cities, buildings are the top emitters. And in Columbus, they're responsible for 58% of emissions. So Columbus is starting to work on that. They're performing 30,000 energy audits, especially in low-income areas, and helping people upgrade, if you need to replace seal the windows or add more insulation or have better appliances, things like that to bring down energy use. And then another thing they recently passed was an ordinance requiring owners of large buildings just to disclose their energy use, because you can't get energy use down unless you're counting it. So they want to start counting it. And then the second piece after that, you reduce the amount of energy you need, and then the energy you do need, you translate that to renewable. So we're working on that with them. They've conducted an audit of city properties where they can put solar arrays. They do have a solar array on their transportation building, but we're hoping to do more with that piece of it. And then the third step is about transportation. So that's kind of multifaceted, like rolling out electric vehicles. And so the city is doing a decent amount of driver education about electric vehicles. They have a center where anyone could go in and test drive a lot of different kinds of electric cars. They don't have to go to 6 different dealerships. They can do it all right there. And just because it's kind of like, if you've never driven an EV, it's a bit of an education and it's a bit of a leap. But once people actually do transition to EV, they don't go back. And the other thing
I have a Chrysler Pacifica plug-in hybrid that I often brag about on this show, and it's true that the driving of that hybrid is just amazing. It's like you're driving on a cloud. It's so smooth and so even. And I did want to mention on the show this week, so thanks for giving me the line here, that this week I was able to get my average miles per gallon on my Chrysler Pacifica hybrid at 91.8 miles per gallon.
Wow.
Is what I was getting this past week, right? Because I'm able to charge. Yeah, I'm able to charge my car at both ends of where I have to commute to. So, yeah.
Right, and keeping your car charged, people think of it as you pull up to a gas station and you just put electrons in instead of gas, but really it's more like keeping your phone charged. Most of the charging happens at your own home at night when you're not driving, but also if you commute, say, to work, if you can plug in there, then you're golden. And there's a lot less maintenance for an electric vehicle too.
I haven't been to a gas station since the first week in March, and I still have about half a tank. So
wow. Being able to just drive by gas stations is great.
But it sounds like, so it's ready for 100. It sounds like you're being a lot more comprehensive than just electrical generation, which is what a lot of people think about. But it sounds like you're trying to address transportation and heating and cooling and all the sources of carbon that we put in the air.
Yeah, exactly. And transportation's the second most highest area of carbon emissions. So, things like having some streets just be open to walking or biking, like if you have a very busy street downtown, and having sidewalks and having safe bike paths, and building from the center of the city instead of urban sprawl. It's all just good city planning that you should be doing anyway, that, having green infrastructure to help sequester the carbon. All of this cities should be doing anyway. Having a strong tree canopy, that all plays into it. But the electricity is a big piece. So in Ohio, we have a program called Community Choice Aggregation, and only 8 states have it, and we're one of the lucky ones we have it. What that means is that a city can pool together all of its customers, all of its electricity customers, and bid those out to utilities and say to utilities, okay, I have, like 100,000 homes here, and I'm willing to let you be the power source for all those homes, but you have to give me 100% renewable energy, and you have to do it at a good price. That's how Cincinnati became 100% renewable. And so you have utilities, bidding to do that. And so a lot of cities in Ohio are aggregated for electricity and for natural gas, but they're not aggregated for renewables. And so we're trying to move those that are already aggregated, move them to renewables, and the ones that are not, to get them to start.
I think it's important to point out that increasingly the renewable not only is the cleanest energy source, it's also the cheapest. It's also
exactly.
And so I have to ask this question. So your definition of renewable or clean, does that include nuclear?
No, it does not. So nuclear requires mining and processing of uranium and continual feeding of uranium into a nuclear plant, and so that's not considered renewable. Is the sun and the wind, or geothermal, and in some cases hydro. But where the source of energy is continuous naturally, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes perfect sense to me. Thank you. You're great relief there. So, Cathy, you are a volunteer. This is the project of the Sierra Club, but you are actually a volunteer. And so what kind of motivated you to take on this responsibility of directing this project?
So I guess about, maybe 6, 8, 10 years ago, I woke up to the fact that within my lifetime, we've lost half of our wildlife populations. The amount of carbon being put into the atmosphere has increased exponentially. I could personally see a difference from the way nature was when I grew up versus the way it is now. I think most people can. That's kind of common sense. As I looked into this more and more, I realized just how serious this is and how little time we have left. And we've got to move this. Plus, then I started looking at the United Nations reports, and, we have to cut our carbon emissions in half in the next 10 years to have a chance of a livable planet. There's already damage done. There's going to be more damage, but if we want to even, keep large swaths of this planet from becoming uninhabitable, that's where we're headed, and huge civil unrest that no government can withstand because of up to 1 billion climate refugees and up to 1 million species going extinct and not being able to grow food, and having our food chain break down in the ocean, because of ocean acidification, that the little shelled creatures that are the base of the food chain can't make their shells. That's where we're heading. And it's, if we want to not kill the planet, this is part of what we have to do. And, people bring up the cost of doing this. Well, the cost of not doing it is unfathomable. It's basically all life on Earth and human civilization. So it just seems like a no-brainer to me. And I'm just a regular person, like probably most of your listeners. And, we can take action and we can do things especially on the local level. That's the other thing is, people who concentrate on national politics, most of them who I know feel very hopeless. And we are making progress on the local level. You can, because that's a lot closer to you, and your government officials more have to listen to you. So that's my advice, is to think globally but work locally.
Thank you. Well, we certainly do appreciate the time and effort you're putting in there, because this is a job that somebody's got to do, and whenever someone actually steps up to do something that needs to be done, that's praiseworthy, I think.
Well, thank you. So Columbus is they just this past week passed a measure. They're going to put aggregation. They are one of the few communities in Ohio not aggregated, so they are going to put aggregation on the ballot in November. So now we have the job of educating the electorate as to why they should support community choice aggregation and let the city negotiate with utilities for 100% renewable energy. So that's where we're headed.
That's great. Yeah, our show does air in Columbus on WGRN on Saturdays at 5 p.m. So
Excellent.
this word will get out there. That's great that you've actually got a ballot measure. Basically, people can vote to survive is what's going on here. They can
That's exactly
finally use
it.
their
Yeah.
vote to say, yeah, I'm going to fight global warming. So that's
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's exactly it.
I wanted to ask you what kind of resistance are you getting any sort of resistance? We have a little story later about what's going on over there in Bratenahl, the village of Bratenahl, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little worried about the pushback from the fossil fuel industry. Are you meeting much resistance?
So right now in Central Ohio, not so much. And I think one thing, honestly, shielding us is the major utility here, AEP, has a company policy of moving to all renewable energy by 2050 and reducing emissions by 80%. So they want to be one of the competitors for these 100% renewable energy contracts, and they are applying to build out a lot of solar farms. So they actually are trying to move into the future to their credit, whereas up in Northeast Ohio, where you all are dealing with First Energy, who wants to cling to the past, you don't have that. But I'm still honestly worried about the other shoe dropping. And what happened in Bratenahl is we got the commitment from Lakewood. Then Lakewood started talking to other small cities up in Northeast Ohio, and the gas industry got involved and started spreading a bunch of misinformation, telling people that they would have to trade in their gas stoves, things like that just aren't true. And they're trying to get these resolutions killed. And so we need to talk about how we're going to deal with this up in Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, I think we used to be in what they call the information age. I guess right now we're in the disinformation age.
Yeah, exactly. Sure seems like it.
I think the truth will out if you can manage to get it out enough. In fact, in my experience, truth kind of trumps lies at a rate of about 10-1. In other words, if you can get your truth out there at least a tenth as much as they're putting out the misinformation, most people are going to buy into the truth because, as they say, there's a ring of truth. There's just sort of a visceral, yeah, that makes sense when you actually talk about, issues, and you one side's got the truth, the other side's got lies. They have to work a lot harder to push all those lies and to drown out the truth. So hang in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, definitely we will, and also the truth is coming from lots of different actors, whereas the lies are kind of coming from the same place, the fossil fuel industry.
The ones who actually would benefit from people believing the mysteries,
exactly,
disinformation. Okay, exactly. Cathy. Well, if people want more information about your project here and how to maybe join in and help you making that green future, how would they go about doing that?
So I would send them to the Ready for 100 website, which is sierraclub.org/ready-for-100, or just Google Ready for 100 and it should come up. But there you'll be able to see all the different campaigns around the country, and there's a list of them and a list of the people to talk to for each campaign. And so I would say just contact the nearest campaign to you or contact the national team and start one in your area.
All right. Well, Cathy, it's certainly been a pleasure. Rebecca, do you have anything you wanted to ask Cathy or any comments before we end the interview here?
Not really, but good. It's heartening that people are doing good work out there. It is.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
It is really true that to just get a little bit of action, to actually do something, is worth an infinite amount of time of sitting around worrying about something.
Very true.
It actually, it makes you feel a lot better too. Like activism is the antidote to despair. Even if you start small, just doing something really helps.
Well, Cathy Cowan Becker, thanks so much for having been a guest on For a Green Future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. So now it's time for a word from our sponsors.
Indeed.
And we're very grateful to our sponsors. And this week we have one of our sponsors, The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, they provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And if you want to see what's going on at the Wood County Parks, there's several ways you could do that. One is by calling them at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. Also, you can go to their website, which is www.wcparks.org. And then, of course, they have an app. It's just go to the App Store and download WC Parks, which is really cool. And they also, a fourth way you can go is to go to their Facebook page, which you just go to facebook.com and then search for Wood County Park District, no spaces, just all strung together, Wood County Park District, and you can find out what's going on at the Wood County Parks. And now, as a public service, I'm going to talk about something that the Wood County Park District sent out a press release, and they are having a very interesting self-guided virtual, or not just virtual, but a self-guided scavenger hunt. And in this time of COVID, it's something cool to do, to get out into nature. The first 2 clues on the scavenger hunt are virtual. And then there's 8 physical clues, and they're located in Wood County parks and nature preserves all around the county. So the first clue, you go to Wood County Park / Wood County Park District, and there's a clue there that will lead you to another clue. And you can also visit at wcparks.org /what's new for educational activities and park updates. But you go get this virtual clue, then there's another virtual clue, then you'll be out in the parks. Then you're out in nature racing around. And you have till May 25th to complete the scavenger hunt. And if you do, then you will be awarded a bamboo cutlery set, which is a fork, knife, and spoon that's perfect for picnics. And this whole thing is called Nature Quest. And it runs from now through Memorial Day, May 25th. In addition to our sponsors, we have our patrons, people who've gone to patreon.com and searched for A Green Future. And right there you'll see some nice pictures of different levels of membership you can choose. They've chosen a membership, and every month, painlessly, a little bit is taken out of their checkbook, but joyfully received by us here at For a Green Future, because that really helps us keep this program going. And we appreciate every minute that we're on the air, every minute we're able to talk to you, and our patrons help make that possible. So thanks so much for our patrons. All right. So now it's time for some eco news and views.
Alrighty.
And one update on the story we covered last week. Last week we mentioned that the CO2 levels that they're recording down in Mauna Loa were at record levels. They had never been that high in the history of record keeping. I mean, they were that high like 200 million years ago, but back in one of those other geologic ages. But in terms of human history, they had never been that high. In fact, they were over 219 parts per million during 1 hourly average reading. And at the time, I said that it looks like they're going to be even higher this month, in the month of May. But it might be that, it's a little too early to tell for sure, but it might be that the lockdown, that all the reduction in the CO2 that's happened over the past sub-weeks is already having an effect, because since that high, and our show was on May 3rd, and there was a high the day before that was 219 plus, and then there was another high almost as high 2 days later. But since then, it's been dipping. It's been going down fairly steadily, down to the point where now it's at 216. So it's already dropped 3 parts per million just in this 1 week's time, and it looks like it's going to start going down instead of up in the month of May. And that would be fantastic, because for as long as the records have been going, May has been the final month of rising before it started dropping in June. And so now if it starts dropping in May, that'll, again, just proof that we can turn this thing around. We can save the planet. All we have to do is what's necessary. So that's some good news. Some not so good news, story out of the Energy News Network by Catherine Kowalski on May 6th. We mentioned it with the interview with Cathy Cowan. The village of Bratton Hall did have a 100% renewable issue before their village council, but apparently they got talked out of it it looks like the fossil fuel industry stepped in. We know that they sent letters to the mayor, and they ended up tabling the measure. And it's just a village of 1,200 people, but unfortunately it's a sign that the fossil fuel industry is more than willing to distort the legislative process, in other words, to derail democracy in order to keep getting their supports. But I'm going to balance that with some good eco news. This past week on Wednesday, the Conesville coal plant shut down. That's down there in Coshocton County. And it's been running since 1957, pumping carbon in the air at amazing rates. And the combination of economics and ecological, the fact that coal is basically being outcompeted by wind and solar right now. All over the country, coal plants are shutting down. And so it's just nice that this one source of carbon, this measurable source of carbon in the country, is shutting down for good. It shut down this past Wednesday. It's an interesting quote from the Coshocton Chamber of Commerce in this story from the Columbus Dispatch on April 30th. The Chamber of Commerce official statement was, "It will not be the same not seeing smoke blowing from these units." And I had to say, no, it won't be the same. It'll be better.
Yeah, the Muskegon, the town where I was born, is not the same since the paper mill shut down, but on the plus side, it smells one heck of a lot better.
Yeah, and people are getting sick less and dying less frequently, I'm sure. So that's some good news. And another piece of good news, another interesting story. For the past 2 months, wind and solar have been providing more electrical generation than coal in the United States of America. One of the pieces of disinformation in that movie we talked about last week, Planet of the Humans, was that wind and solar are basically just coal power, since it takes coal to make them, and electric cars are just coal cars because they're using electricity that it took coal to generate. Well, right now, wind and solar are generating more power than coal in the United States of America. So take that, Michael Moore. My plug-in hybrid is running on wind and solar more than it is on coal. So together they provided 11% of power, and in fact, it also outperformed nukes. Nukes only provided about 7.4% of the electricity generated in the last couple months. So it's happening, and the industry analysts that are quoted in this story, which ran in Renewables Now, that's a website on April 27th, they're saying that this is a permanent change, that wind and solar are permanently going to be, by either this year or by mid next year, wind and solar will permanently supply more power than either coal or nuclear. So once again, take that, Jeff Gibbs and Michael Moore. You're wrong again.
And they can both go take a flying leap.
Yeah. And I did want to say we have time for a call, and I actually haven't put the number out there yet for calls, but 866-240-1065. And so please do give us a call. Rebecca and I are happy to talk to you. And we actually put out a little contest last week. We said the first caller would get a little prize, and rest assured that prize is in the mail. I posted it yesterday. But I forgot to mention that if we call for a contest for call-ins, we'd like you to come on the air.
Yeah.
Russell got to talk to the callers, but they didn't want to actually get on the air. And I just want to say, don't worry. Becca and I are very kind to our guests and our callers, and
we
won't mock you unless you really deserve it, right, Rebecca?
Yep.
Right now, we're already at 8:48, and like I say, I think we have time for a call. So if you'd like to call in at 866-240-1065, we'd love to hear from you. But right now, I'm going to read our letter from the future.
Yay!
Yes, my great-great-granddaughter in the year 2300 has been writing me pretty steadily, and it's kind of amazing the emotional bond you get with someone when you correspond with them. That's something we can all be doing in this COVID time, and it'll help the post office too. It's just write a letter to somebody you know. It's amazing the thrill you get when you open the mailbox, or in my case, when there's this flash of photons next to your bed, and poof, there's a letter. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, dear GGG, Sam and I are on the way home. It's going to be a long stay, at least 3 months. It's hard leaving my work at the drill site for that long, but the whole project is paused again anyway as they re-engineer the whole nuclear waste handling process to prevent another terrible act child and nearly killed me. As you could imagine, I'm pretty depressed right now. Sam helps a lot, keeping me distracted, talking about things that happened when we were kids. The tiniest little bits of hair are starting to reappear on my scalp. One amazing thing that happened, though, word got out on the internet that I was going to be on the train heading for the French coast. All along the way, people lined up along the train tracks to cheer us, and they waved and they held up signs expressing sympathy. The whole world has been watching the project to dispose of your century's nuclear wastes, and so the whole world heard about the accident, and thousands of people came out to wave to us as we were driving across. I found myself crying all across Europe. Oh, and the answer to Rebecca's question about farming versus wetlands in the future. Yes, much of the wetlands around northeast Ohio have been restored. About 3/4 of the Black Swamp is swamp again. But those wetlands are also farmlands. Turns out that cattails are much more nutritious and productive than the corn your century was addicted to. Also, wild rice is grown, and nut trees, like walnuts. So much of our farmland would look like wilderness to you. There is some of what you would recognize as a farm, but it is all raised bed agriculture, and you would be surprised at how little mechanisms we use. No herbicides or pesticides, and farm work is considered a good occupation in the year 2300. Well, that's all for now.
Cool.
Love you, GGG. Marie I.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's an answer to your question.
That's neat.
Pretty cool. All right. Well, that didn't quite take as long as I thought it would, so we actually have time for a call. And so once again, we're going to offer a prize to the first caller, but the rules are you got to come on the air, you got to be at least 18, and the other rules can be found on the WTOD website. So first caller, you'll get a nice little prize, and Russell will take your call and then put you on the air. So 866-240-1065. Oh, and you can't have won the prize within the last 60 days. So thanks to the fella who won last week, but you can't win again this week. Oh, a call. Ooh, hey, caller. Yes, hi, how are you? Welcome to For a Green Future.
Hey, hello. My name's Carl. Yeah, you had mentioned
Carl,
that you mentioned that you're taking a little stroll down the Maumee, and your guest talked very little about hydroelectric. Does the technology exist to generate electricity off a river like the Maumee?
Yes, it does. It's called run-of-the-river hydro, and in fact, the city of Bowling Green has a run-of-the-river hydro plant on the Ohio River, and run-of-the-river doesn't use a huge dam. It's not like the old It's not like the Hoover Dam where you completely block a river and then let a little bit through. Basically, all you do is sort of dig a tunnel from an upper part of the river, and you have your outlet down at a lower part of the river. And as it goes through that tunnel, which is, you don't even see them from the surface of the river, but going down through that tunnel is where you can then put the water through turbines and generate your electricity. So yeah, yes, the technology does exist, and we could do it. And so, yeah, excellent question. And hydro is a very important part of a green energy future, but the big, huge dams of the 1950s, and that some big, huge dams are being proposed right now, those can actually be much more environmentally damaging than they're worth, frankly, because like there's some up in Canada, they've been trying to push something called the St. James Bay hydro project, which would create an enormous lake, almost rivaling a Great Lake. But the problem is that because of the geology, this not only would flood, millions of acres, which releases tons and tons of methane into the air as they decompose at the bottom of the lake, but it also would release tons and tons of mercury, and the lake would have this toxic sheen of mercury on top that would poison anything like birds and things that try to land on it. So, yes, there is a good, environmentally friendly hydro technology called run-of-the-river hydro. Thanks. That's a great question, Carl. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah. So are you a regular listener to the show?
Yeah, I am. I wake up and I had on the sports channel on my radio, and you pop in, and I listen to you every week.
All right, great,
Cool.
Well, make sure that Russell has your name and address, and we'll send you a nice little gift this week.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, Carl. All right. So, anyone else can call in, and you can see how nicely we treated Carl. We would treat you just as nicely at 866-240-1065. We love feedback. That I'm an education major, and one thing they taught us in teacher school is that there can't be any learning without feedback. So if you don't get feedback, you can't really improve because you don't really know what's going on. You don't know how you're doing. So
I want to know what the gift was now. I'm very curious. Is it just is it like whatever is lint and things, pennies are in someone's pocket, or is it a real thing?
Well, I have a little confession to make about the gift. I had these grand plans for like a nice gift certificate, which actually might happen this coming week. But last week's gift was just a check.
Oh, there we go.
Just a check from four.
That's not very personal. It's a little unimaginative.
Well, I wrote a nice personal note with it. It's on a nice card with a thank you, and it had
that makes it better.
Yeah, but
yeah.
next week's prize is going to be a little more personal. It's going to be nicer than just a check. But
yay!
But rest assured, the prize, and we have to, if we give prizes out, we have to keep a record of the prize. So if people accuse us of not having delivered the prize, we can prove yes, we did deliver the prize. So
okay,
we got to follow all those rules to do with prizes. So all right, well, I think this has been a really good show. We only have about a minute left to talk about it and to be with you. I just want to say, express our extreme gratitude. And, in this time of irrationality, in this time when people are arguing against facts, they're arguing against science, as if you could change the concentration of CO2 in the world just by, saying, oh, well, CO2 doesn't hurt anything. I just felt it was really necessary to create a program like this one, which is based on fact and science. And I just really appreciate the ability, the opportunity to share this with you every week.
I feel like we should talk about the murder hornets for a minute.
Okay.
Yep.
We've Yeah, we initially talked about the murder hornets last, I believe it was in November.
I hear they've so far only found dead ones in America, which is good.
Well, we didn't call them murder hornets. At that time they didn't have that nickname. They were just called the giant Asian hornet.
Yeah, well, it's catchy
in the world. Yeah,
it's very catchy.
But
plus, maybe some North American predators will eat them. We're hoping still.
Yeah, I mean, the Asian carp, nothing used to eat the Asian carp, but now, as I saw with my own eyes, the great blue heron are eating Asian carp. But,
good for them.
But the thing is that it was just in a small place in Washington State, and normally I'm opposed to pesticides, but when you get an invasion like this that can cause so much ecological damage, and it's still concentrated in a tiny area, like less than a county, then I say, in that one situation, go ahead and spray. That's it for this week. This is Joe DeMare and Rebecca Wood signing off.